Hey out there, welcome to Hurricane, West Virginia, home of the Hurricane 100K Trail Run and Relay, coming to you on September 6, 2025. On behalf of our events team of Ashley, Brandon, Hager, Stewarts, Robert, Vanessa, and Tara, and all of the Meeks Mountain family and our Meeks Mountain Board Trail Alliance, welcome to Hurricane, West Virginia. My name is Matt Young. Super excited to have you here. We are here live at our favorite local hangout, the Bridge Bistro Cafe in Hurricane, and we are here for the one and only Dan Green, the world premiere of It's a Dan Green Day. Everybody, let's hear it for Dan Green. You see him? So we have a packed house. This is a sold-out event with standing room only, and all of our millions of fans and followers and listeners out there on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, streaming, and also on Spotify. We welcome you as well. So this is to celebrate Dan's win at Cocodona 250, a course record, and really for a local guy, man, we couldn't be more proud of you. So super excited to have everybody knows Dan. So we're going to have just a real quick, if you haven't heard already, the Hurricane 100K coming to you on September 6th with a $10,000 prize purse on the line. And so with a $2,000 course record bonus as well. So with that, if somebody comes in, the course record, by the way, is 9:03:11, held by none other than Dan Green. It's set in 2023. For our ladies, Abigail West set that in 10:33:34. So if somebody comes in here, wins the race, and sets a course record, they can walk out with a check for $4,500. Super exciting for that. All that made possible by our friends at the City of Hurricane and Mayor Scott Edwards, Dumont Tri-County YMCA, the Generations Physical Therapy, and a host of local businesses that love our trails and love our community. So we're going to get into some cool stuff. We're going to introduce the panel and some invited guests. So you already met Dan. We also have Ryan. I'm the real Rambo Ramsby. Let's hear it for Ryan here too. Over on the end, we have the professor. We have the crew chief. This is Isaac, the Stone Cold Trail Killer Waite. So this is our panel from our crew, but his crew also had some more people in it too, and so we're going to introduce those. First of all, we have Danny. Don't dare call me Roger Hayes, right down front. Raise your hand for him, Danny. Yes. Also known as the Enforcer. We also have Dirty Dave Fowler. Raise your hand up there, Dave. Yes. And then we also have Logan. Smoke him if you got him, Kirby. Logan starts every race with a menthol just to warm up his lungs. That's where he gets the name. So in addition to that, we also want to welcome two people that if it wasn't for them, none of us would be here. So we have Dale Green and we have Teresa Green. And we have Daniel and Frederick's parents. So it is an honor to have you here. They came on all the way from Pennsylvania, surprised Dan, knew they were coming. Thank you for being here. You're not a stranger to Hurricane. You're part of the Hurricane family. You've been here for every single Hurricane 100K. Excited to have you here for part of this. So we're going to get into some questions, but we have a video to get started, just to set the tone, get you all warmed up. You guys ready for this? All right, let's do it.
Is in contention, which is kind of crazy thing to realize, but over the last year or so, almost 2 years, I've kind of come to terms with changing my mindset from thinking, okay, I want to run as my job, I want to be a runner. So I want to go out there and put that confidence to use and my training to use. I want to win.
Oh, he's gonna win. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, boy. What's up, dude?
Hey, let's go, bro, baby. Get it.
way.
Let's go, boy.
Yeah, but you were close.
That's it.
Yeah, we'll finish this and then.
About to wrap this little tortilla up, baby.
We're still a mile out.
Love you, dude. Love you.
Here we go. Let's go.
This is your champion. Very congratulations.
The community support that I've had from these guys, from Isaac, from Ryan, from all the people I run with, from you, Matt, from like everyone that comes into the shop and talks to me, like 100%, like as corny as it sounds, I'm like running for all of us over here.
We thank. So Ryan Ramsey put that video together for us. Thank you for doing that. What a great way to get started. Dan's running for all of us, and it just shows that how many people feel it and love it too. I neglected to talk about Big Brother Fred Green. Introduce him. He's all the way out in Seattle. But Fred, hopefully you're watching the stream of this. Miss you being here, and wish you could be here. But we might hear from Fred a little bit later. You ready?
We're good, dude.
Let's talk, man. Let's do it. So everybody wants to hear what it's like to run 250 miles. So Dan, trying to capture a 250-mile race in just a few minutes feels impossible. But people have asked you, let's just go back and let's start at the beginning, at the start line. What did that feel like stepping up to the line of Cocodona? And then somehow what was going through your mind? Fast forward 58 hours, 47 minutes later, 250 miles. How do you describe that finish line?
Finish line?
Let's do it all.
You know, to be completely honest, as underwhelming as it sounds, the finish line feeling wasn't that great. I mean, it was great, but I wasn't thinking about a whole lot because I wasn't thinking about a whole lot the entire time. So, as crappy as an answer that is, that's kind of what it was like. Seeing the guys come, we were probably, a mile out when you guys met up with me. I think that was probably the finish line for me. Once I saw them and everyone was out there, I was like, there's only one reason we're celebrating. It's because we're going to win, at least. So that was probably the real finish line, was seeing everybody out, however far out we were. I mean, it was crazy. It was like, it was kind of hard to believe. I didn't really think it was like happening to a certain point. You kind of, and I've described this before, like with my training to some people, it's like you train for something like this, or you want to like take it to the next level. And it's such an outlandish goal that you push it off so far. You push it off so far ahead of you that you forget about it. You try to forget about it, and you just train like say you want to like have a big result like this, you train like you're going to do it, but you don't think about it. You don't think about the end goal. And so you kind of forget that what you're training for, but you're doing it. Same thing with this race. It was kind of like such a long race. You don't want to, I mean, you're not thinking about the end. You're just thinking about moving the whole time. So it was kind of like when you get to the end, it was almost unbelievable. And then, of course, saw you guys, started to believe it. We're like, damn, we're pretty close. Hit a couple red lights. And then we got to the finish, and it was just, it was crazy. I mean, there were so many people there, and like, you got people with iPhones on gimbals all up in your grill, just wanting to snap a picture of you. And it really set home when I finally called my girlfriend. I'd put it off. Everyone kept asking me if we wanted to call Sydney. Do you want to call Sydney? Do you want to call Sydney? As we were running in, I was like, I want to wait till it's over so I can actually talk to her. And so as soon as we crossed the finish line, I forget whose phone it was, maybe Fred's or yours or somebody's. They gave me their phone. I talked to her, and she was just bawling, and I was like, shit, this is it. We did it. I was like, that we actually did it. So that's when it really set home, I guess. But so I guess two layers. Seeing you guys and then calling Sydney was like the biggest. It was just unbelievable.
How many of you were watching the live stream when Dan had to stop for the stoplights, right? were the rest of it, did they like warn you at the beginning, like, don't you dare jaywalk?
Yeah, so when we got there, we got to the finish line and there was nothing set up. You know, Dan was running so far ahead of schedule that the finish line wasn't even there yet. So while we were there, Steve, the race director, came up and was like, hey guys, FYI, the city of Flagstaff will pull our permits if you don't follow the, pedestrian laws. So we were like, oh man, what are pedestrian laws? So we're like, we run in Huntington.
We're runners, dude.
Yeah, like you just don't get hit. That's the law. So we're like, okay, we're sitting there Googling the city of Flagstaff pedestrian laws, and we're like, okay, you got to stop at red lights. So as we're running out, did this not happen? As we're running out, I'm telling the whole crew, like, we have to follow these laws. Somehow the race director pops out of a van and is like, you better follow the laws. So we made sure to follow the laws. So a lot of red lights. Sorry.
Hey, I think it was 3. That's not too bad.
I think the rest of us were like, your crew, Dan, is like letting you down. Could they not stop traffic and give you a safe passage or something here?
Danny ran ahead and was clicking the button. It was pretty good, dude.
Best that you could run ahead and get ahead of him at that point, right? Yeah, we
I think it was supposed to be
saw you
Logan,
working.
and then you dropped the ball. Oh yeah.
So I think the theme of this is Logan dropped the ball a lot. It's kind of we hear that a couple times, 3 times at least. He's out smoking a cig. Never know what's going to happen there too. So, all right, so Ryan, let's move to you. We've got some follow-up questions, Dan. We're coming back. We're not done with you, okay? So,
Take your time.
Ryan, so Ryan, if you didn't know, he's run Cocodona. He ran it last year. So you've been Cocodona. You've been through the crucible yourself. You know the terrain. You know the exhaustion. You know the mental grind. From that perspective, how do you describe what Dan accomplished out there and really what makes that kind of performance so special?
Yeah, Cocodona, when you're standing on the start line of something and you're staring down 250 miles, it's a little bit overwhelming for most people. And, obviously he's, one of the best in the world. He proved that. And he's standing there with a lot of others that are, top in the world. We're not just talking the country, the whole world. And I think what separates Dan and what makes it possible for him is his ability to compartmentalize and be very present in the moment. And that's something that a lot of people are not very good at. And, he just talked about it in his opening statement around, I'm not thinking about the finish, I'm thinking about this next step, and being as efficient as possible. And knowing what the first 37 miles of Cocodona are, if it was a standalone 50K, it'd be one of the hardest 50Ks in the country. It's super technical, typically very hot. He lucked out, he got the easy route. It was cool. It rained a little bit, so that's why he won. But, him being able to sit back, run his race, and not let the moment get bigger than him shows a lot about who he is as not only a runner but a person. And I think that mentality and that thought process is what separates him and allows him to go out, and whether it was 250 miles or 350 miles, whatever it would have been, he would have been the same Dan Green on that day, and he would have performed just as well mile over mile. And I think that's what separates him, from the rest of the field.
So with that, that's taken on some of the mental aspect. You always say that ultras and running is a physical discipline, but it really is a mental pursuit. But what he does physically and what he did physically, and just to put a little context with that, you and I both deal with some stomach problems. Watching this, dude, he's got like an iron gut. So between the heat, the hills, the technicality, the whole package, you've been there and experienced it, and nobody's run it faster and it was 6 miles longer. How do you put that in perspective?
Yeah, I think it's hard to put in perspective. And I think in our first interview, you were like, what would you tell Dan? And it's like, I can't tell Dan anything. He's beyond me. He's beyond anybody around for the most part when it comes to running. So I think what we learned is that he can climb. You know, I think a weakness of Dan's was his climbing ability, no longer a weakness. You know, he proved that he has climbing legs as well as, you know, just flat land speed. And all in all, it's just his ability to hold himself together and stay present. And he does have an iron stomach. I mean, some of the stuff we were having to throw together because the aid stations weren't ready. You know, we were at Denny's at 3 a.m. having the cook, you know, whip up hamburgers, you know, in like 25 minutes. Who knows how good of a quality that was, but only his stomach can handle something like that, you know? So he's just different, man. That's really as simple as you can make it.
So the first time I talked to Isaac out there, he told me about the Denny's experience. Something like we're rolling at 3 a.m., the chef's sitting down in the booth or smoking a cigarette, put it out and say, can you have 7 burgers ready in 20 minutes? And he hopped to it and was ready to go. So great experience. And those are things like those midnight Denny's runs. Haven't we all had those? Or everybody that's over 25 had a midnight Denny's run at least. So you got one, but from a different perspective. So Isaac, let's talk to you for a minute. In the opening video, there's a clip of Danny, don't dare call me Roger Hayes, talking that he predicted the win with absolute certainty, 100% confidence. You're a professor, you're calculating. You took care of the logistics. When I say take care of logistics, they were dialed in. That is your thing, along with Logan. Deep thinker, wealth of experience. What did you have his odds at? And now that he's done, how would that change?
Yeah, I kept all my opinions to myself before the race because I looked at the situation like this, that Dan has a very high aerobic capacity, that nobody there has a better aerobic capacity, but it's about a lot more than that, that it's about eating, it's tolerance to fatigue, it's ability to stay positive over the course of several days. And then we saw with the mud that there's a lot of maybe physical issues that aren't usual to running, the extra weight of carrying mud on the shoes. So long story short, my view was that Dan had about a 1 in 4 probability. That's how I saw it. I didn't tell him that, but I saw it as
300
25%.
runners, that's really not that bad.
Well, I mean, if you look at the depth of field, the people who were there, I mean, he was racing the greatest of all time. Courtney DeWalter, she's an assassin on the trail, and she's proven at the 200-mile distance. Dan had never run a 200-mile, 250-mile race before, so there were a lot of unknowns. We thought that things would go well, but I thought realistically there were plenty of other people there who could have a successful day, but he was the one who had all of the elements, and a lot of it was mental, which I think would be applicable to any kind of conditions, not just a cool weather year.
So you mentioned that mud, and Arizona's not known for mud. Talk a little bit about the conditions that were extraordinary this year that you hadn't seen before.
We were sitting in a hotel pool, and there was a really heavy storm. Like, we had to get out of the pool for fear of our life. There was lightning everywhere, raining extremely heavy.
In the hot tub.
Well, I got in the pool. You were in the hot tub.
It's a pool if you go underwater in the hot tub, all right?
So I wasn't expecting thunderstorms in Arizona, but we sure got them. And so the mud would cake onto his shoes several inches, and it was like a clay mud with bits of gravel. It stuck to the shoes. There may be a photo that we'll see a little bit later on of the tub that we destroyed in Munns Park trying to clean off his shoes. So it was on there and really heavy too.
Yeah, just from the mud perspective, we're in the middle of a race and we're being chased down by a legend, Ryan Sands, and you had no choice but to, for Dan to stop. He would literally lean over and I would take a stick and scrape literally inches of mud off the bottom of his shoes over and over and over. And this is when I was like, man, if you don't know I love you at this point, like, I love you. And here we are. And I'm scraping. And the words he was using, we just can't use in front of this crowd. But it was significant. It's not like your typical East Coast mud. It was, to Isaac's point, more of a clay.
Well, they don't get a whole lot of rain, as we know. I mean, it is the desert. But you had not just the rain, but 4 seasons. So what was that like going through 2 nights, the different conditions with the rain, the snow, the sleet, the hail? How would you describe that too? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lot of different environments, seasons, I guess. It was, at least for me personally, I don't know how you guys dealt with it, having to stand out there and like be in it, and that would be difficult. Set everything up like kind of in whatever weather it was, but at least for me, it was kind of just like take it as it comes. Luckily, like they would set me up so good leaving an aid station that I was at least dressed for the elements that were happening right then and there, so I was fine. It wasn't ever really that cold, except on top of Eldon was probably the coldest, which is right at the end. So really just having a rain jacket was kind of like the biggest thing you needed. But preparing for the mud, you couldn't have really prepared for that. But yeah, the elements weren't too bad. I mean, it never really got that hot until the last day finishing. It was warm to the finish, and it was really cold on top of Eldon. So you got the coldest and the hottest right next to each other. So I had to like put stuff on, take stuff off. But I mean, it didn't seem like too big of a swing of temperature, at least while I was moving. I would put on a bunch of stuff at the aid station because laying down, Isaac had me wrapped up, regular blanket, heated blanket, other blanket, sheet, air mattress. And I'd get under there and kind of burrito myself into the air mattress. And I'd get really warm, obviously. And then I'd get out of there and I'd be freezing cold. So I'd be shivering uncontrollably, and they would warm me up, put a bunch of clothes on. It was probably cold too. It was probably like some of those nights. It was probably 50.
It was much colder.
40, colder.
It was much colder than that.
Listen, they were really good runners that were put out of the race for hypothermia. That's how cold and wet it was.
Well, it didn't seem that cold, and they would put enough stuff on me to where I'd run about a mile or two from the aid station. And I'd have to stop and take something off, or like take my vest off, hook it on something, change my clothes, and then keep running. So the weather really never was too big of an issue.
Well, that's another superpower for you. So the highlight here that when you know that you have an awesome crew chief, when he takes an electric blanket to Arizona.
It was sweet.
He's thought of everything, has he not?
Y'all, dude, everything.
So Dan,
we had not to cut you off. We 100% had the best sleep setup of any elite. They were all skimping for some reason. Like Ryan Sands had like a size of mattress that I've never seen before. And it may not even have been air. It may have just been foam. It looked really crappy. And I'm like, why would you even want to like have that in there?
We wanted you comfortable. The eye mask, the earplugs.
What was the sleep setup like? I was like, what did you have?
I mean, it wasn't the Taj Mahal that he's describing it. It was a Walmart air mattress, so you get it for $12. But yeah, we had it set up in the back of our Dodge Caravan, the Silver Bullet, where we'd roll into an aid station, and we would have the air mattress inflated in just a couple of seconds with the electric inflator, then sheet on top of that, because you don't want to lay straight on the rubber. A Hurricane 100K blanket, a Hurricane Crush Run blanket.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so took a piece of West Virginia with us. Had a 12-volt electric blanket because when I was there last year with Ryan, I knew that it gets brutally cold up in the mountains. You know, you think Arizona's far south, but 30s easily. So had to keep him warm and comfortable. A pillowcase, just the usual.
One of the things. So we listened to some of the before the race. Some of the different podcasts were doing all of their predictions and things. They talked about Dan, and they, a lot of them had Dan really high up, like number 1 and number 2 in different predictions. But then they said, but he doesn't have experience at the 200-mile distance. And I was like, I mean, that's important, but his crew does. So you've got Ryan, who's been there for 250 miles. Isaac is a multiple 200-milers. I mean, the crew was pretty phenomenal. So in a lot of this, we've talked about Dan Green and his dream team crew, and that really is the case. So that was really the next question for you, Dan, is, how do you describe what your crew did for you, and what are some moments, we already heard one, that really stands out as one where they just went above and beyond for you?
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to I'm not the best with words, so it'd be hard for me to describe what they did for me out there. But I mean, you could use your imagination too. But I mean, just to have 6 people, 6 of your friends, 6 guys, just you sign up for a race. I almost didn't have to really ask anyone, hey, do you want to come crew me? It was like, oh, we're coming to crew you. And I mean, that makes it so much better. And I think Isaac did make me seriously look him in the eyes and say, I need you to, not need you, but do you want me to come crew? I was like, I need you to be the crew chief, dude.
I didn't want to assume.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that was good. We locked that down early on over some burgers. But, I mean, just, it's insane how just so much support and just love I felt from everybody and just everyone's commitment to just give me, like, however many days. I mean, it's like a week of everyone's time, you know. People have kids, people have jobs, and, like, just to drop it all and kind of, like, come out and help me, like, wipe my feet off for, like, 2.5 days, which Fred did most of that, so I don't owe him anything. But for everybody else, I mean, like, just doing the stuff they did, I mean, it was just insane. And, I mean, I couldn't have done it without them. Like, and it's hopefully evident, like, in our little movie we have that Ryan put together, and, like, hopefully every time I'm on a podcast. But, like, yeah, you definitely can't do something like that without a crew. You can run a 100-miler without a crew. You can run all kinds of ultras without a crew. But if you're going to run 2.5 days and you want to actually, like, win or compete, you definitely cannot do that without a crew. Someone told us you could do that with 2 people, ideally. That's a lie. There's no way. You need 6 people, minimum. Because it was perfect. So, yeah, it was just, I mean, it's hard for me to really express, but it was like, yeah, it meant a lot to me that everyone was out there.
Well, not only we're talking about crew, but this crew are also your pacers. And so
Every one of them paced.
when you're talking about somebody that is as fast as Dan, you only have 2. There's no way they're keeping up with you. So it would take a whole platoon of 5 guys, 6 guys to keep up and do those pacing legs, because, you know, I think I saw this. You guys can correct me. Isaac probably knows exactly, but his pace for the whole race, and this includes stopping, taking a shower, eating, going to the bathroom, changing clothes, everything, was a 13:40 pace, which means his moving pace was smoking fast. And to run that and to keep up, like, Danny and I, fairly similar, and I'm going, how's Danny going to do this? Because I don't think I can.
Got it.
Dude, I don't think that I could do it and keep up with him. So did that hurt you the way it hurt your wife? We're just talking a dose of realism here, right?
We'll talk after.
Yeah. So I just made the enforcer mad. But let's talk about a little bit what you all had together as far as your assignments in the pit crew from a crew standpoint.
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to mention one thing about being a crew member. Trail running is such a unique sport in that amateurs get to be in the same event as the pros. And so, you know, imagine if someone who enjoys football suddenly could be at the Super Bowl, playing in the game, helping the team. I mean, it would blow their mind. But that's the opportunity that Dan gave each one of us who were on the crew, is that, you know, we were running with the pro. Danny and Dan passed Courtney to Walter. You know, like...
I'm so sorry, Courtney.
So, I mean, it's a gift to be involved in the event, and, you know, it's something that you'd have to drag me away. But, so, the jobs. So Ryan was tasked to be kind of familiarized with Dan's gear, and so that meant, you know, knowing different pieces of clothing that he had, the shoes, so that during the race, if Dan asked for, you know, the blue hoodie, that we weren't scrambling to figure out where is the blue hoodie, what is the blue hoodie. I mean, it was already decided in advance, and Ryan did a great job with that. He obviously also took a lot of video and was making posts during the race, and so he had an important role when it comes to like documenting the journey. I focused on maybe logistics and putting the spreadsheet together, a little bit of the travel planning, picking places that we were going to stay, and so on. Fred is a nurse by profession, and he was our medical officer, so he was checking on mainly the feet was the main thing that we were interested in, is keeping the blisters at bay, and also determining like when to start with the caffeine, because that was, once we pulled the pin on that, you can't stop the caffeine once you start it. So that was like an important decision that he had to make. Logan was kind of the jack of all trades. He knew where every piece of equipment was. He, thank goodness, brought a rocket boil, and since we had so little hot food provided by the race organization, was able to give us boiling hot water for noodles on several occasions. So like Logan was kind of, if you asked him at any time, where's the chapstick? He'd know any piece of item, knew basically like a savant with tracking all sorts of equipment and stuff. Danny was hydration, so he had to know precisely how many scoops of this for which bottle, and he did a great job with that, trying to. Hydration obviously in a race like this is really important. And Dave was in charge of food, so tracking what Dan had eaten in the previous segment, setting him up with new snacks during the next one. If there's something that he hadn't been eating, he wouldn't replenish the same stuff. And over the course of several days, Dave and Danny became really fast at loading the vest. We got off to a rocky start. That's something we should have practiced in advance. That's my fault that we didn't.
We're going to talk about that.
But by the end, they would have that thing broken down and refitted just in seconds. So it was like watching Formula One.
So it's kind of funny to me that Dirty Dave Fowler is your food handler. Did he have to pass any kind of have any kind of food handling card?
He did not have a net
like
over.
That?
He did not have a net over that beer.
No.
There's no way.
Yeah, it's like having Pigpen handle your food, so you've got dust and dirt all over everything. What do you care about at that point, right? So let's go back. Let's go back to Crown King. Speaking of bottles and hydration, and this is like, I think Crown King is going to be known as Bottlegate from here on, right? So. What happened at Crown King? Dan, from your perspective, what happened at Crown King? We'll get yours first, with the bottles and the vest.
That's the first aid station? Yeah. It was, I went in to use the bathroom. I was in there for, what I thought was like a while in aid station terms. And then I came back out and, we're still working, which is fine. Still working at it. I wiped off. We were taking our time. We were no stress. It was mile 37. You got 220 miles left, basically. And then I look over, and I think it's Danny and Dave got my vest. Like, oh, is it you? They got the vest hooked onto themselves, and they got the bottles all in the wrong spots. And this vest is it's not a very intuitive vest. It's kind of difficult to use. Like, some of the pockets will not hold things, but they are pockets. And they hold some things, but not all things. And some things they just evacuate. They just drop them onto the ground. And one of the things that they evacuate are bottles, and they had the bottles in the evacuation pockets. And I was like, it's not going to work. I was like, give me that vest. I will do it myself. And so I was trying to do it myself, and couldn't really do it, and I made Ryan come over and try to help me too. But we got it. We got out. We really weren't in there that long. I was just stressing out.
8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Yeah,
It felt like it was way longer than that.
So to be fair, we had planned for this aid station, I think it was like 10 or 12 minutes. We were in and out in 8, and he was in the bathroom for 4. So it's not as bad as he makes it sound. In addition to that, we hadn't done a dry run on gear until 9 p.m. the night before. So I guess Dan just thought we were telepathically going to understand what he wanted and when he wanted it. So to be fair to the crew, I got your back, guys.
Yeah.
He left us out to dry.
So it sounds like from here on, and everybody that's watching this might want to do Cocodona, you're going to be practicing these pit crews. It's like, Dan runs in with the vest, change it out. What's everybody doing? Like, you're doing this thing in real time, right?
Yeah.
We should have done that.
Well, I think we learned.
And now you know.
I think we learned, if we were to do it again, 2 vests.
Yeah.
Whatever vest you're using, you 2 vests. You switch it. Hopefully you could be able to get, we would get everything twice. I would just try to get everything twice. You had to have a bunch of essential gear. Like, you had to have a flash, a headlight with an extra battery, like safety blanket, a heat blanket kind of thing, a rain jacket. Essentially, you had to have those couple things the entire time with other things depending on where you were. But we would probably have, 2 of those, 2 poles, all 2 sets of bottles, 2 sets of everything, and just switch the whole vest out. That's the only way to do it fast.
So Isaac, you were the wizard behind the curtain, planning logistics. You and I had a talk on Sunday about logistics and about strategy, and then also about surviving first contact and a plan.
Yeah.
So, talk about how in-depth the planning was, spreadsheets that you and Logan put together, and then how that planning, everything that you envisioned, what that looked like in reality, and then how do you adapt?
Yeah. So Dan had kind of decided that he had 59 hours as a goal. He wanted to finish the race in 59 hours. And so we put together our best estimate of if he's doing 59 hours, how much of that is moving, how much of that is stopped at aid stations, and then you kind of just work backwards on what speed he needs to achieve on each segment to do it. So we had projected arrival times for each of the aid stations. Preview, it went out the door almost immediately because the race was just so much faster than we had anticipated. So, based on our assumed arrival times, and then the race organization tells you which sections can be paced, we put together a plan of who the pacers were going to be in which segments. We had an idea of approximately how much water or liquids he'd need to take out of each aid station. He had gone through and made up bags that had a certain amount of calories, like in a Ziploc pack, so we could just use an individual pack and not try and assemble it at the aid station itself. So you raised the notion of strategy, and I heard one of the interviews that Dan gave after the race, the Cypress, the videographer guy. Juniper, not Cypress, Juniper, yeah. So they had asked Dan, what was his strategy in the race, and he said, well, I didn't really have a strategy. I just showed up, as fit as possible. And I really think in a race this long, strategy is less important, and just preparation and logistics is what lays the groundwork for success. And so, he had the huge aerobic engine. He had assembled a crew of people who really cared. Logistically, just thinking about the lucky strokes we had with, I can't overemphasize how important Logan's, stove was. Just having hot water at a couple of aid stations was key, because when he came into an aid station, he wanted hot food. He was done eating the sweet gels. He was done drinking, the sweet electrolyte beverages, and he wanted something savory. So, the point is that I think for a multi-day effort, just having, not necessarily, you want to go through the planning process just so you can uncover things that need to be addressed. But the plan went out the window really quickly, and we just kind of fell back on our ability to move quickly, have the things that we needed. And so in the end, I think it was largely about logistics plus his insane athletic abilities.
Right. We've hit a lot of highlights up to this point, but Dan, talk about your lowest point in the race, and then what happened that helped you rebound from that.
Well, I like to think I didn't have any low moments during the race, but I had maybe 2. I've had one with Dave. You're probably talking about the one with Ryan.
I'm not talking about anything.
Oh. Well, I had one with Dave. I think that was that before or after that? After Minka coming down from Jerome. So the first one was probably with Ryan, and I wasn't bonking, and I wasn't really super depressed. I was just angry at the mud. We were on probably a section that everyone kept telling me, oh, this is the best section. This is super runnable. You're going to crush the section, super runnable section. It was half uphill slightly, and then the end was downhill, and the uphill section and flat section was all super muddy. So it was really crappy. So I was expecting to run it. We couldn't run it because it was you take 5 steps, you have 2 inches of mud on your shoe, and then luckily Ryan was there to help me get the mud off my shoes. I tried to scrape it off myself as best I could, but a stick and another person is the best way. But yeah, I was just super angry, which sometimes fuels me a lot too, unfortunately. Just anger. so I can I'm really outward with that. So if you ever pace me, anyone here, I may sound like it's the worst day ever, but that's okay. That's just moving me forward. So, but it got pretty dark, and then Ryan's like, "I'm calling Sydney, dude. You're a jerk, so I'm calling Sydney." So he called her against my will, and I talked to her for a second, and it was kind of okay. It was good to hear her voice. It was ultimately the best thing that could have probably happened to me at that moment. And then we came back, and then finally got to some runnable terrain, and came a huge downhill that was mostly asphalt, kind of logging road that was more gravelly, so it wasn't any mud, and kind of ran, I don't know, there was probably 3 miles of descent that was clear into Jerome, and took our first nap because I needed one. I was being a baby.
And I'll just add real quick on there.
No, we want to hear your story. We talked about in the pre-interview, take notes when Dan gets cranky, because Dan, he never gets cranky. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get mad. We hear he got angry. So we want some real stories here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in this audience have run ultras. I mean, it's obviously the running community, and when you're in that dark place, and maybe you've paced and you kind of understand, I just need to read the room and understand. I don't need to say a word right now. I need to be quiet. There's nothing I can do to make this better. But what I will say, and Sydney's not here for this, but fortunately or unfortunately, that call was on speakerphone, so I was just kind of the middleman. I was like, oh, this is pretty intimate. But what it did is it showed the love and how much importance Sydney has in Dan's life, and it went from bleep, 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 what are we doing here? Bleep, to her saying a few words and him completely doing a 180. And that's really what got us through that segment. I was there physically, but she was the one there emotionally. And to see him absorb that.
Simple man, dude.
To see him absorb that from her, 1,800 miles away was pretty impressive. So hats off to her. She's not here, but thank you, Sydney. You saved me for the next 3 hours.
Yeah.
So keep that microphone, Ryan. So you've run this course. You've seen it from start to finish. What's something that Dan made look easy that definitely wasn't?
All of it. Oh man, that's a really tough question. I think Dan just handles adversity a lot better than most of us. I've been there, I've done it. I like to say I walked so Dan could run, type thing. His race was it's really a completely different race, just happens to be on the same course, but his ability to continue to move at an efficient pace when your mind is telling you to walk, he ran the whole time. It might have taken hey Dan, let's run a little bit here. But at the same time, he had the willpower and the ability to, what I'll say is his self-talk was unbelievable. I stayed about 15 feet in front of Dan the whole time, mostly so I didn't get physically abused, but I could hear him talking to himself behind me, and it was just like, holy smokes, this guy is different. The things he was saying to himself out loud, but to himself, would inspire anybody. He's in his world fighting for the race that he wants to run and the outcome that he wants more than the pain is bothering him. He wants that win more than he's willing to accept the pain that he's in. And to hear that, 15 feet in front of him was something that I think all of us who run races, whether it's a 5K or 250-mile race, what you say to yourself matters, and what Dan had to say to himself mattered. And he was able to take that and put it into practice, and I think that's something that a lot of us can improve on.
But the real question is, was he referring to himself in the third person while he was doing that too?
No.
100%.
Come on, Dan Green. Pick it up, Dan Green.
That's the only way I knew he wasn't talking to me.
Dan Green?
Yeah.
I didn't hear him do that once.
Oh, come on.
I had easy pacing sections, so.
Thank you, Isaac.
But you were the rest. So, Isaac, the next question is for you anyway. So, how do you,
for me.
thinking about like the communication that you had, and there's one part in the video that Ryan did where Dan says, Isaac looked me in the eyes and said basically like, you have to sleep, and Isaac has great eyes. So that was part of it. So understanding, knowing, that was all right. It was all right in that moment. You're allowed to do that.
Hey,
So
jokes are good. You
understanding,
need jokes.
reading him, and then communicating with him to like what he really needs based on what he says and what you observe. How do you do that? How do you manage that?
So that was Jerome aid station. He hadn't slept yet. If he had said he didn't want to sleep, I wouldn't have kept pushing. We as a crew had kind of collectively talked about it probably would be wise, it would be an investment in the future, it was probably time, but he didn't show any signs of cracking at that point. He was still very alert, and so I just suggested it, and I guess maybe I was a little bit more emphatic than I had been at Mingus, and he decided that he would do 10 minutes, and we left him in there for 12 and a half. So.
And it worked. How did you feel
Hey.
after that nap?
I guess I felt good. I felt like I took a nap. I think I told Danny, I was like, maybe I feel sleepier now that I took that nap. I had lost the crack energy, I was like, up until that point, I was like, I may not even need to sleep this entire thing. Until after we took that nap, and then I was like, damn, I feel kind of tired. But I think ultimately, like, that's one of the things that rings true, like, through my experience through Cocodona and Ryan's too, is like, it's an investment in the future of the race. When you're running this far, every little thing you do in the beginning, which I think is another reason why we ended up winning too, is like the things we did before Ryan Sands did them. We were ahead of schedule. So like you don't want to be back, you don't want to try to backload sleeping or eating or anything like that. You have to be on the forefront of it. I mean, it's 2.5 days. It's like you need to sleep the first day or so, at least a little bit.
You put on warm clothing before you get cold. not
Yeah, you
after.
put warm clothing on before you get cold, because then you're screwed. So it was like I knew going into there, I was like, okay, we've been running for 26 hours, and I haven't slept. We should probably lay down for like 10 minutes. That'd probably be good if I could sleep. And that was the best sleep of the whole thing, to be honest. Nothing bothered me. I could just lay down, nothing hurt. So it was really worth laying down when we did.
So a handful of quick, real stat questions too. Everybody wants to know. You talk about sleep. How much did you actually sleep?
I don't think we'll ever really truly know, but I would say it's less than 30 minutes, probably around 20.
Seeing some head nod on that too.
Yeah.
How much non-moving time of the 58 hours and 47 minutes did you have?
5 hours, I guess.
I was asked
5
earlier,
hours.
how much weight did you lose from being saturated with fluids beforehand until after?
I didn't weigh myself. I don't know. I was pretty swollen afterwards, so if that adds weight, then I was probably heavier than when I started.
That was the gas station burrito.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I'm a low salty sweater.
And tell us some of these, because there's videos. So we got the gas station burrito. What were some of the things? So
What
talk
was it
about this
called?
iron gut, man. What
The
did
El
you eat?
Diablo? Don Miguel. Logan found it exactly on the internet, so he knows what it's called.
This gas station burrito?
Yeah.
But you're eating that. You're eating bacon cheeseburgers. Talk about some of the things that you ate that were especially good out there too. Because everybody wants to know, like, what do you eat as well?
I couldn't
And
believe-
Did you eat all those oatmeal cream pies?
Fred bought like an Italian sandwich at Whiskey Row, and it was like a grocery store sandwich, horrible bread. Like we didn't want to eat it, but he thought it was the best thing he had ever tasted when he got to it.
It was like one of those sandwiches where you get, and it's so crappy that the bread's split, and it's like a 1/4 of the bread, and the other 3/4 is the bottom. I took the real big piece off, and I ate the regular sized piece of bread. But it was actually pretty good, because it was either ramen and nothing, or ramen and that sandwich, so I had both. We were in the search of protein, so we ate the sandwich.
Isaac, what's one thing you're most proud of from a crew perspective?
I guess I'm most proud that that we were there to support Dan, that we didn't make any gigantic mistakes that ruined his race. You know, after we got home, I woke up in the middle of the night and I kind of thought that it was during the race and I was late to meet him at an aid station. The crew got pretty sleepy partway through the race, and so we were laying down at the Airbnb when he was out with Logan, and you know, Logan had said, "Wow, you guys go check on Ryan, see how he looks coming in and out of the aid station." We were just exhausted, so we said, "Nah, we're not going to do that." Fred made the call on that one, but yeah, I guess I would have really hated it if we overslept and didn't get to one of the aid stations. We never did that, so that's, I guess, what I'm
What you're most proud of, right?
We were
That
there.
You didn't screw up.
We were there
That's
when
good.
we were supposed to be there.
Yeah, that's good. Good, man. So, Zach, we've got some photos. We want to run through some photos. We're going to look at a few pictures here that just kind of help,
brother.
help tell the story.
Look at that, buddy.
So, when you look at this elevation profile, what do you guys have to say about this? What stands out about that?
What Ryan was saying about this being the hardest 50K in the United States is obviously true. You're gaining like 5,000 feet of elevation before you get to Crown King.
I think it's like almost 8,000 feet.
Well, yeah, cumulative 8. Yeah. So, and, you know, it's rough climbing, like scrambling. So, I mean, it's not just the distance, not just the elevation, but also the irregularity of the surface that makes it really difficult. So, you know, a lot of up and down. This is not a flat race. Dan?
Yeah, it doesn't look as daunting on this line here, but
It looks.
and
looks
to be
pretty
honest, I
daunting.
think that's the way you should look at it. Any race you do, because if you see it and then you kind of plan appropriately, like we said earlier, you train for it. It doesn't look as crazy on this line chart. That's essentially, you could just think about the race the whole time like that. If you really pull yourself back a little bit, and it may not be as bad for you for whatever race you're training for. I will say, take note of the two no pacer sections. They were a big deal initially, but ended up not being a problem. They were actually kind of like, they did us not a favor, because it would have been nicer to have a pacer there, but they were pretty easy sections, I would have to say.
We were nervous sending him out. Like, you know, when you've got somebody who's been running for days, they're sleep deprived, it's cold, it's rainy, it's dark. We felt a little bit uncomfortable, but, you know, he always popped up at the next aid station, so.
Well, he says it wasn't a big deal. He made it literally 155 yards out of the aid station before he called us and said, "Am I going the right way?"
It wasn't marked, dude. It wasn't marked, and the GPX file on my watch did not line up appropriately, which you had the same issue last year. So it must be the way the GPX is, where it actually, maybe they like ran the route with the GPX and then they built a sidewalk after the fact. And so the sidewalk doesn't match for about probably 200 yards what the GPX is. And so when you're that far into a race, the last thing you want to do is take any extra wrong way steps. So you freak out, which I did, and I called them instantly. I was like, "Hey guys, I'm lost." Yeah, I got lost before, slightly, and back on track, but then called you guys, and I was like, check the tracker, check the tracker, check the tracker. Am I on track? And we were on track.
One of the things that stood out to me about this, too, is that Whiskey Row is mile 77. You went 77 miles and saw your crew just one time. That's a long stretch to go on your own. So as much crew support as Dan had early on, those first 77 miles, he was doing a lot of that on his own. These are just we'll move on through these, but these were some of the aid stations. I mean, Isaac, you may probably actually want to talk just a little bit about this, because these were the locations, your projected time, and then actual arrival.
This should illustrate how far ahead of schedule he was. For example, we thought he'd get into Munns Park Wednesday at 2 a.m. He got to Munns Park Tuesday at 11 p.m. So several hours early. And there were other aid stations where he was even further ahead of schedule. All this planning kind of it went out the window because they were so far ahead of where we expected them to be. And the race organization, too, I think was scrambling to keep up with how quickly the race unfolded this year.
I love this one. I mean, take 6 guys to pick out sunscreen. Is that what's going on here?
Gotta find the right one, dude. My brother Fred is the most particular about sunscreen, and he is the palest, so it makes the most sense. But he is so afraid of the sun. It's absolutely unbelievable. But I did not get burnt.
The
That whole
bald
time.
man did not care at all what was going on with that sunscreen.
Wear a hat.
Which kind of surprises me, right?
It rained the entire time.
You brought all 72 bottles of sunscreen home with you, didn't you? Good stuff. Start of the race. Can you describe what you're feeling here? What was going on?
I just want to make an observation about how unaffected Dan was by all of the attention. I thought maybe the podcast that we did before the race would have the potential of getting in his head and make him overthinking about the race. And he was getting recognized everywhere we went, but he seemed like it was just rolling off of his back. And so Ryan was mentioning how good he is about compartmentalizing, and yeah, I definitely would second that. He seemed collected and relaxed and, not the least bit panic attack, which is, I think, the more appropriate response to something like this.
Except when you're trying to decide between In-N-Out and Raising Cane's.
I hate being a
Don't make
problem,
him make decisions the day before the race.
I hate being a problem. Dude, there's a lot to those stories, so I mean, hey.
Did anybody see WSAZ's story mid-race when they actually had who was it? Isaac, I think, that was actually with him tasting. And so
That was
they asked
extremely
him,
out of pocket for them to do that.
it was hilarious. So they
It was
asked him,
fun.
Dan, you're running 250 miles. What's going through your mind? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And, it was funny, but really, to do these things, that truly is a gift. And Ryan mentioned that, too. I always say, my friend John, he's gone, John Baldwin has the ability just to turn the brain off. I don't have that ability. It's one of the reasons I'm so with this stuff, and Dan's excellent. You have got to turn your brain off and just roll. To say nothing, man, it's a gift to be able to have that. Love it. So this is one of
know
these
who
little
that
naps
is.
here.
Yeah, this Fred enjoying some.
That's Fred.
Yeah, that's Fred.
We should have known from the pale legs.
Yeah, look at the luxury. He's on a yoga mat. He spent about an hour, no blanket, partially heated cabin on the top of a mountain. But that's
Where's his hat?
Mingus.
Notice that the yoga mat doesn't reach fully to his head.
It does not. How
You
tall
might-
is Fred?
6'4", 5".
Ryan was testing out the air mattress while Fred was on the
This is
yoga
post
mat.
shower, dude. This is good times.
What I'll say real quick, having run the race and crewed the race, when you're running the race, everybody cares about you. You're the superstar. When you're crewing the race, nobody cares at all. So your accommodations plummet.
So what's going on here? I mean, how many people does it take to get Dan to the bathroom at this point?
6.
Is this the shower? So let's talk. I mean, that's unprecedented to me. Is the shower in the middle of a race?
He was covered in mud. I think it was faster than if we'd tried to use wet wipes getting his legs cleaned up. Plus, it's chilly out and a warm shower. What feels better than that?
It was a cold shower. It wasn't like hot. It was. You guys said it was warm, but I guess, colder. So I was like, it still feels pretty cold to me. I will say the benefit of a shower, if any of you plan on doing anything this long, one thing you have to be careful of, you're just throwing lube on yourself the entire time for however many hours your race is. Cleaning everything off and redoing that probably saved it. I mean, I wasn't having any chafing issues or any blisters or anything up until this point, but I may have had them if I wouldn't have done this. So I think it was, if I were to do it again, if we were to sign up again for the race, I would plan a shower here.
I think it's also like a gangster move, show the competition that you're feeling so confident you're going to take a shower in the middle of a race.
Courtney was sleeping, dude. Yeah. She didn't take a shower.
So there's a great part
Rookie
of
move.
Oh, Courtney, I hope you watch this, honey. What's just cleaning those feet, lubing those feet. There's Fred. Fred, always on the feet, right? Look at that dirty water. Is that what came off your feet there?
Nah. Look how good those feet look.
That is the
Look how good those things look.
Anybody want to caption this for Dan right there?
You're missing the 7 Denny's boxes.
Is this Jerome?
Yeah. Fred was constantly asking the question, is it time for the zinc oxide on the feet? He wanted to know, is it time for him to apply, the drying ointment? And he never did pull the pin on the drying ointment, but he kept a really close eye on those feet, and they turned out great.
I will say, when my feet were maybe like really wet, maybe it's because I'm not from out there, or maybe it was just lucky, but I would lay down in the back of that van, the Silver Bullet. I'd wake up or get up, and my feet would dry out really quick, I thought. Like from touching them, taking my socks off, to getting up from a lay down, my feet were like way drier than they were, which maybe that's not like that for everybody. Like maybe if you're from that kind of climate, like you hold water differently, I don't know, but I felt like my feet dried out really quick. So we have the upper hand.
Just another
All of
example of
us.
the dream team. Who in the world has better foot care than Dan Green had out there from his brother Fred?
Probably no one.
Nobody. Yeah, it's getting a little shut eye, even with the sleep mask, man. This is awesome. Electric blanket, sleep mask. I see the crushed run blanket there. That's good to see.
It's my first time ever using a sleep mask.
So the other question was, what did you dream about?
There's no dreams, dude.
Al.
Honestly, I think the biggest thing of laying down in that van, even though most of the time I was in it, I wasn't sleeping, is just where I was so like only focused on just moving, not thinking about anything else. You're just thinking about moving. Being in there or at the aid station, you don't have to think about that. It's like a mental break more than it is a physical one. Like, I probably could have done the whole thing without sleep. I would have been really cracked out, and I wouldn't have been able to not find my gels on Eldon. Or I would have died coming down. But I think just the mental break of being in there and not having to think about, like, moving was even more beneficial than just the sleeping aspect.
Great point.
Probably.
There's that bacon cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Dude, an iron gut.
So Ryan Sands was in the aid station at the same time. And this is where we started to get a sense from his crew that things weren't going well. They were a somber bunch. Maybe it's a nationality thing, but they just were not having as much fun as us. And we inferred from that our runner was feeling good and theirs wasn't. So I think it was here that we kind of started to get a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, this is definitely when the mental games came into play, and that's,
We were doing it.
that's just reality. It was, how can we mentally begin to break? Maybe physically they're close to equal. Mentally, no chance. So this is where we began to really separate.
Smile, laugh, baby, this is easy.
I think
right?
this is where I hit them with a really loud, what are they doing over there? I was like, I hope they heard that. That'd be kind of funny if they did.
Is he eating a bacon cheeseburger? I don't think he is, right? Oh, that was good stuff. That's the toilet, or the toilet. Is that a toilet?
It looks like a toilet, right?
That's the tub you
Yeah,
destroyed.
don't send this photo to the people we rented the apartment from.
They know.
Their plumbing
know.
is clogged.
Good idea, the dirt and the mud that came off of those shoes.
So this is Corinne. She was on the live feed. Probably a lot of you who listen to the live feed heard her commentary. And she was running for about 6 miles with us and just chatting, kind of relaxed. But it seems like every anecdote and every stray comment that we had during that conversation turned into commentary during the last few hours up to the finish. It was interesting. She must have a photographic memory or something. But things were looking pretty good at that point. He was still moving really well. This is 230 miles in, and he was running. And that's another one of the superpowers, is just that he wants to run when he still has such a significant lead. It's in the bag, but not taking it for granted.
I would like to point out here that I'm wearing Logan's pullover. At one point during the race, I realized I'm not wearing any of my own clothing. I guess all my stuff was wet or something, or maybe they thought it was inappropriate, and I was just wearing everyone else's stuff. Yeah, that's true.
Did the smoke smell not bother you? from
No, it
Logan's
was
Boulevard?
fine. I was used to that. It was good.
Oh man, finish line.
I haven't seen these.
What's going on here?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the finish line was not set up. So we became employees of Aravaipa Running. Well, I didn't. I just watched them do all the work. But Dave and Danny did a lot of work for Aravaipa.
That's where Dave started sweating.
We didn't want Dan to show up without a finish line. So literally the box truck pulls up, and Steve, the race director, is like, you, and you, let's go. And so this is literally the crew setting up the finish line.
So I'm sure not only was the course was 6 miles longer, the conditions were tough, and Dan beat that course record by an hour and a half. So.
All right.
So was this a call to Sydney? Was that the phone call? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sid, we wish you were here.
Yeah.
Sid, the science kid, she's out doing medical school stuff, you know?
That's right.
She's in pediatrics right now.
Yeah. All right. Here's the dream team. Dan Green and his dream team crew. How about it? So we mentioned we had other members of the crew, not on the panel, but we did want to get a few words from them. So we got about 10 minutes for each of them to share a little bit with us. I'm going to use this. One more question. We're going to wrap this up. Wrap this tortilla up, baby.
You're first, bud.
I think what was amazing to me was how mentally into the competition he still was in at mile 200 plus, and he was just fully invested. He was like, he told me, you can't give me data fast enough. He would have been fine if I told him his position every single time that tracker pinged. It was like, I want to know where everyone's at. He still had that. He was very lucid at that point. Through the second night, was very aware. He had corrected me a few times on a few things that, who was pacing him next. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways as far as Dan as a competitor. And then, as far as Dan as a friend, that segment is something that I will never forget. He, at that point, that was mile 193 to 214, I don't know, somewhere around there. And he was in the lead, and he had finally, I think, broken that seal of I fully trust my guys. I've paced Dan several other times in races, and running ahead of him is a big sticking point for him. It's you don't do it. And in that segment, it was basically I want to turn my mind off, and not off, but I want to be able to just, you make the decisions. You pick what we run, you pick what we walk, and I want to make some ground on Ryan's. So all right, well, we talked about being about it in this segment, and so let's be about it. And so we just started rolling and just ticking off. At one point I looked down, we're running 9:10 pace, 9:15 pace. And we absolutely hammered the second, 2/3 of that segment. Ended up, we came into Fort Tuthill 8.5 miles ahead of Ryan in that segment. And so, we were putting a lot of good ground on it. We flew through the Kelly Canyon aid station. We were there less than 15 seconds, fill up one bottle. And so it was just a cool segment. It's one I'll never forget. I don't know, I felt like from that point on, he was just super enjoyable. I mean, I would just start by saying thanks for letting me be part of it. I think for me, it starts way before Cocodona. Dane and I share a lot of miles together. What he went through with his training block, it was so well deserved. I should tell everyone I know, all my coworkers, man, this guy, he's the real deal. And, just thanks for being about it. Thanks for going out there representing. I think there's something special about Huntington and this area, this community, and kind of the blue collar mentality of just grit that we all share, and just going out there and just putting it on display, I think is all that you can ask for. So Thank you.
There were many certainly inspiring moments. But I'll speak to the segment that I shared with Dan between Dead Horse and Deer Pass. He had not slept yet. And so that was probably up to that point, one of, if not his mental and physical lows. But even then, even in that moment of maybe the lowest of lows up to that point, he never lost sight of gratitude that he had for not only for the crew, for us being out there, but also I was kind of sharing and relaying some of the messages that I had gotten from people that I know that Dan doesn't, from people I know that Dan does. I even shot a video. I don't know, Matt, if you know Adam Perry, but he's a huge advocate of the sport and a big fan of Dan. Just an awesome dude. And he had been, posting on Instagram and various other places, like his encouragement and like how inspired he was. And I was just kind of sharing that with Dan. I was like, man, let's send Adam a video. I think he would love that. And so I shot a video and Dan just, dude, I love you. Thanks for supporting me, blah, blah, blah. And I shot a little, 30-second video and I sent it to Adam. It absolutely made his week. And so even in those moments, he never lost sight of the gratitude that he had for all the support that he was getting back home and beyond. And, if you know Dan, he's very big on, if I'm out there running and can somehow motivate or inspire someone in the place that they are at, whether it be to run or walk their first mile or maybe take on their own, their first or biggest ultra to date, then it's all worth it to him to be out there. If he can just inspire even the smallest incremental step towards somebody, challenging themselves or bettering themselves. And to me, that was what was most inspiring, was that he never lost sight of that, even in his lowest of lows. He never lost sight of what was most important. And that was pretty cool to see firsthand. He never changed.
And I don't want to point out that I was with him when we passed Courtney. We leave, and we're a mile behind her. And I screw up. I pulled a Logan, and we run to a fence, the very first fence, and my map is showing to the left. And Dan's like, no, it's over here to the right. I said, dude, my map shows it's to the left. He's like, I'm telling you. So finally we stop, shine a light. And as we go to cross the fence, he's like, you can't be doing that shit. I was like, okay, I got you. Sorry. And this is the first time that I've really seen him and been alone with him. And I'm apologizing for the very first Crown King. It's like, dude, I'm so sorry about your vest. It was a screw up. We messed up. And he's like, no, really, it happens. It's all right. So we get in this muddy field, and we can see Courtney and her pacer. And we just inch closer and closer and closer. And finally, whenever we go to pass her, you got the typical banter between runners. Hey, you're doing great. Everything looks good. This muddy field sucks. And we pass her. And it's awesome. Bucket list running item, check it mark, and we get almost without earshot, and Dan raises his hand and he goes, hey, I would still like to get that autograph for my girlfriend. He goes, well, I'll see you in Flagstaff. And to go from that being funny to hearing him, we're 95 miles in, something like that. And the very first and the last thing on his mind is Sydney. And he wants that autograph for Sydney. And it just goes to show how much he cares about her. So it went from a funny to, holy cow, Sydney is like here.
Basically in the final stretch into the finish line. What was that moment like for you?
Was there conversation? Can you describe what was going through your head as you brought him home and witnessing this for your little brother?
Yeah, I mean, dude, getting ready for that section, I was pretty nervous. Just that, that I was gonna shortchange him in some way or let him down. And honestly, before the section, I was feeling like pretty emotional because we knew, you know, barring like any type of catastrophe, that he was gonna win. And yeah, I was feeling like pretty emotional and like honestly just like so proud of him, even before we started the segment. And then, but like once we started going, I think something him and I have in common is we just kind of can lock in. And so like all of the like outside stuff kind of went by the wayside, and then it was like 19 miles of strictly business. But it was just really cool, man. It was really special to get to spend that time with my brother, and to have him have such a big result that he's worked for so long, and to be there right at the end was really special. I mean, when we were running down the mountain and we like start passing all these like Flagstaff locals that are like, oh, there's like so and so, he's like a celebrity in the running world. There's Jeff Browning, and there's like, Jim Walmsley outside on the street. It was like kind of a surreal situation. We all got to run in with him, but to be the one who got to like go up over the top of Eldon and watch him just about fall down the front side of Eldon. Yeah, it was just really cool. I think Dan was completely like empty. I mean, he was excited, but he was, he ran it to empty, I think. And so, but the rest of us were like jumping around, man. Screaming, hooting, and hollering. Isaac brought me a granola bar, which I was like, he's like, "Are you hungry?" I'm like, "Dude, I am starving." It was so cool, man, to see them, and yeah, just like it felt like the race was already over before we even, with those last 2 miles, it just kind of felt like a victory lap. And yeah, I love those guys, man. That's just a great group of dudes, and we worked well together the whole week, and it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'd just say like thank you for dragging me along on this journey, man. And I know I'm like so honored to be a part of this, and just so proud of like all the work that he's put in. And just tell him that he deserves this, and this was a lot of work, this wasn't a fluke. Like you deserve this win, and like every one of us is just so grateful to have been here with you for it. So thank you for the opportunity to take part in this.
How's that for a dream team crew? Wrapping that up. One more question for each of you. For Ryan, for Isaac, it's going to be the same. Then Dan, we're going to end with you. But just if you could sum up your Cocodona 250 experience with Dan in one story, what would that be? Ryan, let's start with you. Something that stands out.
It sounds cliche, but inspiring. Having done it myself and then seeing what is actually possible does nothing but bring me confidence in what maybe I can do moving forward if I believe in myself the way that Dan believes in himself and the way that he believes in this community and anybody that runs with him. Having trained with him, really, really hard for the past 6 to 8 months. A year. I mean, we've run together way too much. It's way too fast for me.
Not anymore. You guys push the pace.
It being around Dan just makes you better in whatever capacity, and getting that experience with Dan at Cocodona, he was there for me on my crew, and then being able to be there with him as a small piece of his crew and be a small piece of this story. I don't even know why I'm up here or how I'm lucky enough to have him in my life. But I'm truly thankful for that. It makes me a better runner, but ultimately a better person And I'm just so thankful.
Man, thank you.
Hey, we did it, brother. Thanks.
Isaac, Professor, crew chief.
So I've sometimes worried that Dan was not sufficiently fixated on the details. You know, like I like to think about
He
the
had
sweat
you.
test. I like to worry about the osmolality of the hydration solution. But he wasn't worried about that, and he wasn't worried about anything. I paced him on some just really relaxed segments, and he approached a really big goal with quiet confidence, a good attitude, relaxation, and I think that's something that I want to emulate, is just not only the courage to do something that seems a little bit crazy, to reach and achieve something you haven't done before, because that's what he accomplished. It was something unexpected that, you know, was outside his prior experience, but also just being relaxed about it and not overanalyzing the details, not getting overly anxious, just trying to be in the moment. And it's easier said than done, but that's something that I want to work on, and that's the specific way that I was inspired by this Cocodona experience and Dan's amazing performance there. It wasn't just an athletic performance, but it was like a performance of like the human animal, like of mindset, of the ability to digest, the ability to have friends and have them believe in you. It was just, you know, it was a peak life experience, and that's the sort of thing that I want to try and achieve in my life.
Good stuff, man. So Dan, after all of this, you know, and a lot of your crew talked about this, and you've talked about it, man. If there's somebody out there that's sitting on a dream, big goal, feels impossible, whether it's a race, personal milestone, just something that they want to achieve and accomplish in their life, what do you say to them?
That's a tough question. I mean, if you got a big goal, you've probably thought about it longer than you should have. It's probably a goal that you've been thinking about for so long, and maybe not even told anybody about, and it's just like a goal you think is not possible, and you kind of have to approach it, at least for me, you kind of have to approach it in that type of way too. So, you know, if it's a huge goal that you think is not possible, maybe you have to do what you think is not possible to achieve the goal, I guess. You know, I didn't know that I would feel okay running, not to compare it to myself, but, you know, I didn't know I'd feel okay running 2,000, like 300 miles before Cocodona in that year, or like 125 miles a week average leading up to the race. I wasn't sure that I would feel okay. I wasn't sure that I wouldn't get injured. I wasn't sure that it would actually be the route to success. So that's kind of, you have to treat it like it's something more than it is, and you've made a goal that you obviously think you can achieve, even though it may be lofty, but you thought you could do it. So if you think you can do it, you could at least think you could do the work to do it. So, I mean, yeah, I would just say, you know, plan accordingly, surround yourself with people that love you and care about you and put themselves out there, and just, yeah, be about it, you know. It's easy to talk about it, but it's a lot harder to be about it. But once you start being about it, it's like anything. You start doing something, it is so much easier to continue doing that thing, whatever it is. I mean, it's like, for us, just short example, I mean, we were getting up, I was waking up at 6 a.m., 4 a.m. We wake up at 4 a.m. now, for some reason. It's, you know, that's just a little example, but it's like, you know, you can do it, I guess. If you follow those guidelines.
Yeah, just do what Dan Green does, right? So. I mean, that was a round of applause, but one more time for Dan Green and his team. Anybody else grew up in the era of the A-Team? Watching the A-Team? Hannibal, he always finished every episode by saying, I love it when the plane comes together. Right? Sitting up here and looking at this. Did you all have fun? And was this a good time? So when we're done with all this, we had a pre-interview with Dan and Isaac and Ryan. We have this live event, which is going to be archived on Spotify, and you see it on all your favorite social medias. We also have the full interview with Dirty Dave, with Danny, and with Logan about an hour. And we have an hour with Fred. If you want to dig into this,
No one told me that.
you're gonna nobody, because you weren't supposed to know. So we sent the script. We sent the script and the questions to Dan, and he was like, "You never sent them to me." And he was like, "Yeah, we did." Well, he said Isaac said they were good, so I guess I was okay with them. So, but all of that to say is that what's really cool about this is when you're watching the live stream too, is that how many times did they say Huntington, West Virginia? Every time Dan Green was on the screen, and for about 57 hours, it was about Huntington, West Virginia and his crew. You know, when I talked to Isaac out there, I said, "How's it going? What's happening?" He said, "Everybody is loving Dan Green. They love his personality. They love everything about him. Everybody loves a winner, but sometimes winners aren't that pleasant. Dan Green and his dream team crew, the exact opposite. What is so good about this? In this community, and we're sitting here in Hurricane, West Virginia, at our favorite local hangout, for this community that we have that just built 31 miles of single-track trails over the course of 5 years that have been all volunteer built, people doing it with nothing without any expectation for anything in return, that's just doing something for other people. And that Huntington, West Virginia, our community is on showcase here, and we want everybody to see what we know we have here. So we have great runners, we have great community. Everybody come, check it out when you do, eat at Bridge. So hopefully everybody had a great time, man. Love you all. Thank you for being here tonight. So let's hear one more time for Dan Green and his Dream Team crew. Half of all of us here at Meeks Mountain Trail Alliance, a Hurricane 100K, we will see you out there and see you in September. See you guys. That's a wrap.
You know my name.